Alright, we have a 2003 Jeep Grand Cherokee Limited. This one has the V8, but they should be pretty much all the same. We're going to pop, these look like probably 7 or 8 millimeter bolts. Pop these two off, spin this. We'll pop these two off, get this drive shaft out of the way, and then we need to mark and then remove the nut and pull this yoke off so we can access the seal. And that is in fact an 8 millimeter. With those caps off, those bolts and caps off, we'll take a pry bar and just lightly pry back on that. Pop that drive shaft loose. There we go. And you want to be careful not to drop your cap off too. Let me use both hands to get that. And with the drive shafts out of the way, obviously you can see we have the yoke exposed, the nut exposed, and these are a little bit tricky. There's actually a crush sleeve inside, and the torque is set by rotational force. But since everything is used, it can be a little tricky. The easiest way to do this is to take a center punch and mark the flange of the nut and the yoke. We'll tighten it all back up and get it close, and then just make sure these two marks match up when we're done. So that will put it back to exactly the way it is right now, so we don't have any issues with bearing preload. All right, with that marked, we're ready to back this nut off. We'll just position that yoke so it's straight up and down with our marks pointing towards the driver's side, and we'll use an impact to back that nut off. So that backed off nice and easy. Now we're ready to remove the yoke. Alright, we lost our GoPro battery there, but with a couple of light taps from a hammer, this yoke will slide right off. Just remember how we had it indexed on, straight up and down, and the marks pointing that way. With that yoke out of the way, we can access our seal, and first we want to match up our new one, make sure that it looks right, and then we need to drive it out. There is a flange on the end, so we can actually take and get a small pry bar screwdriver up on the edge and work a couple spots, and then just pull that seal right out. Set the camera up here as I go, but pretty much you just grab an edge there and get a spot started, get another spot started, then you have actually a space. You can wedge your screwdriver in there and just start tapping it around, and it'll work that seal right out. It may take a few tries, but it'll come out. Alright, I'm not gonna lie, this thing was actually really glued in there, as you can see from the, there we go. Finally popped out, but they really had that thing glued in there. Let me get a train pan on there. So a little bit of fluid up in that nose. But yeah, they really had that thing sealed in there. It's a shame the seal wasn't better quality, because it definitely wasn't gonna leak where they sealed it, where they pushed it in. With the old seal out and the housing prepped, cleaned, it's time for the new seal. This does have a flange, so we'll put that on there and just lightly tap around the edge nice and evenly, drive that right in. With a little persuasion from a hammer, the seal drives right back in. So now it's time to take our yoke and line all of our dots back up and put that back on in the same position. And then we'll torque the nut down and again line the dots that we made earlier back up. So what we're going to do on this step, we got the yoke slid on, we got the nut put back on, we ran the nut in to where it just got tension, and now we're going to keep an eye on our dots and very slowly creep up to it and line those up. If we overshoot, that means we over crushed that crush collar, and that'll change our preload. So it won't be the same as it was before we put the seal in, and could possibly make bearing noise and or whining noise. But anyway, we'll very slowly creep up to it, and we'll keep looking at it and try and get those dots lined up as close as possible. All right, so we got that really close. I don't know if you can see those dots there, but they're lined up very, very close. So that is as close as possible. We can put that back to the way it was with the correct torque. Like I said, it's not really so much a torque, it's more of a rotational torque. But it changes when you have an old bearing, and we just put a new seal in, which is going to change it too. So it's always a good idea just to mark it and put it back the same. Now we'll take and put this drive shafts back in, and once we get that in, we're good to fill up the differential in the front. With our drive shafts installed back in, we'll reinstall these caps, and there is little notches, one on the top, one on the bottom. Just make sure you have that universal centered in there. It'll keep it centered up and down in that yoke. So we'll get these caps installed. They did have some Loctite on them from the factory, so we'll reapply as we tighten them up. Now for filling up the differentials, like I said, the front has a removable screw out plug, and the back actually has a rubber plug, but we have the plug removed, everything's tightened back up, and the front actually calls for synthetic 75-140. So that's what we're going to put back in. I think the back is just a synthetic 80-90. With the differentials filled up, topped off, plugs back in, we are finished this job. Everything's tight, wiped off, clean. It's a little shiny, but that's just because we wiped all that off. It's looking good. So, all right, guys, we're gonna get this off the lift, out of the shop, back to the customer. Thanks for stopping by, guys, and as always, have a good day.